Peace Chapel. Morning. Can we give it up for the praise team? Yeah. Amen. And for David, for that awesome testimony, Brother David, we love you, man, and we love the work that God is doing in your life. I love to hear testimonies because, when I get up here, I can get up here and speak and talk from the Bible, and people can say the Bible is not true and even question whether or not God is true, but no one can question a person's testimony. Because your testimony is what God has done in your life. And if you choose to give God credit for the good in your life, that's your business, and nobody can stop you. That's right, now, some people like to take credit themselves. I like people who like to give God credit. I give God credit for every good thing that's happened in my life, and I thank God for what he's doing in the lives of other people here. It's so good to be here today worshiping with you. The worship was special today. When I walked in the church, the atmosphere was set. I love when the atmosphere is set. It makes it a lot easier for me when I get up here to preach. We are in the second part of a message series that we're calling Adulting. And before we get started, I want to welcome all of our guests who are worshiping with us for the first time. I want to say welcome to Peace Chapel. Well, I see some new faces here in the church, and perhaps we have new faces online. But if you are worshiping with us online, I want you to hit that subscribe button and then hit that notification bell so that you can be notified as we drop new content. I'm excited about this message series. It's a pretty challenging message series. It's one of those messages, or the series, at least the messages in the series, the ones that I'm preaching, where I probably won't get a lot of amens because it's very challenging, the things that we're talking about. We're talking about being responsible adults. Yeah. And we live in a world where we have a lot of adults that are not responsible. And last week, I asked you guys to imagine a world filled with irresponsible people. A world filled with people who don't pay their bills, where nobody pays their bills. We have people that pay their bills, but imagine a world where nobody pays their bills. Imagine a world where nobody takes care of their children. Imagine a world where nobody obeys the laws, nobody obeys the traffic signals. Everybody does what's right in their own mind. Imagine a world where nobody finishes what they started. Imagine a world where nobody kept their promises. Imagine a world where nobody exercised self-control. And now I want you to imagine a world filled with people who are as responsible as you. I want to bring it home to you. Imagine a world filled with people who are as responsible as you. To the mothers, imagine a world where all mothers were responsible as you. To the fathers, imagine a world filled with fathers who are as responsible as you. Those of you that work for somebody, work for a company, imagine a world where all the employees were as responsible as you. Those of you that own a business, imagine a world filled with business owners who are as responsible as you. Tenants, as responsible as you. Landlords, as responsible as you. Last week, I introduced this question, and this is the question that we're going to ask ourselves throughout this series. This is the adult question. Every adult needs to ask themselves this question regularly, and that is, am I taking responsibility for my life? Am I taking responsibility for my life? Every aspect of my life. Am I taking responsibility for my attitude? Am I taking responsibility for how I respond to adversity? Am I taking responsibility for my past? Am I taking responsibility for my present? Every single adult needs to ask themselves this question on a regular basis: Am I taking responsibility for my life? Because I personally believe that the responsible people in our society are the heroes in our society. I thank God for responsible people. I don't know where we would be in life if there were no responsible people. And so the true heroes in our society are those who live responsibly. How many of life's problems would be solved if people just lived responsibly? Responsible people take responsibility for their lives. They get into problems just like everybody else. Responsible people have trouble just like everybody else. But responsible people don't look for other people to rescue them from their problems. Responsible people take responsibility. I got myself in this mess. I'm going to get myself out of this mess. Even if I didn't get myself in this mess, it is my responsibility to get myself out of this mess. Irresponsible people are looking for the government to rescue them from mess. But how is that working? We've been waiting for the government to rescue irresponsible people for years. How is that working? Are things getting better or are things getting worse? Nobody's going to rescue you, truly rescue you from the mess that you got yourself in. You need to be the hero of your life. But what does it mean to be responsible? Being responsible means that you're using all of your self-control, and we're going to talk about this. Nita G is going to dig into this because I believe that Christians have an unfair advantage when it comes to self-control. And I'm not going to talk about that today, but Nita G is going to dig into that when she gets to her part in this message series. But responsible people use all of their self-control, all of their skill, all of their knowledge to take care of themselves, even when it is difficult. Yes, sir. Responsible people have the ability to respond to situations in a way that is appropriate and thoughtful, even under pressure. We think before we respond. We give some attention before we respond so that we can make sure that we are responding appropriately. See, if you're ignorant in your response and somebody else responds ignorantly, both of you are irresponsible, and both of you have to deal with the consequences of your response. But I get it. You weren't born with a lot. I get it. Some of us were born to adverse situations. Some of you grew up without a father. Some of you grew up without both parents. Some of you grew up in a situation or an environment that just pulled you down, and so you were born in a disadvantage. You were born in adversity. I get it. And I know you look at that and you say, that's not fair. And I get it. It is not fair. Life is not fair. Fairness ended in the Garden of Eden. Life is not fair. It's not fair that you grew up where you grew up at. It's not fair that he walked out on you and you gave your all to that relationship. It's not fair that you're raising those children on your own. It's not fair that you were born and you grew up in the ghetto. Life is not fair, but what are you going to do about it? Are you going to continue to focus on the fact that life is not fair and use that as an excuse to be irresponsible? Or are you going to play the cards that you have been dealt? Because at the end of the day, it is your life. And you are an adult and you are responsible for your life. Some people are born and they have the ability to run faster. Some people are going to be taller than you. Some people are going to be born to parents who have money. Life is not fair, but that's life. And life is never going to be fair. I don't care who we elect to be president. I don't care who we elect to be assemblyman. I don't care who we elect to be governor. No human being is going to make life fair. You got to deal with the life that you've been dealt. You have to deal with the life that you have. The playing field will never be level. And so when people say that life is not fair, what they're really saying is that it's uneven. And I agree with you, life is uneven. But the unfairness and unevenness of life is often used as an excuse for irresponsibility. We don't use that as an excuse to be irresponsible, because think about this. Aren't we more inspired and motivated by people who came from adversity, and despite everything that came against them, despite how challenging their life was, they just figured out a way to keep moving ahead? Aren't we more inspired by people who generated their own wealth than we are by people who had things that were handed to them? Life is not fair. Life is not even, but you can still be successful. Life is not fair. Life is not even, but you're still called to be responsible. Your irresponsibility doesn't stop with you. Someone else ends up carrying a load that you're supposed to carry. As we mentioned last week, your irresponsibility will eventually become someone else's responsibility. It's going to fall into somebody else's hands. That's why we see mothers who are stressing out. Even though their children are grown, they're stressing out because they have an irresponsible adult child. And now your mother can't sleep at night because she's worried about you because you're living irresponsibly. And if your mother can't do anything about it, if your family can't do anything about it, you become a community problem. And it gets bigger than that. You become a state problem. You become a country problem. When people pay taxes, they're paying to deal with your irresponsibility. And so your irresponsibility will eventually become someone else's responsibility. And so it's not good for you, and it's not good for the people around you. It's not good for you because you'll never be happy being irresponsible. I've been there. I've lived irresponsibly, and I'm telling you, irresponsibility drains your soul. Even with people handing you excuses, good excuses, really good excuses, but it drains your soul because there's always something hanging over your head that you know you need to take care of, but you keep putting off taking care of it. You'll never be happy living irresponsibly. It drains your soul. So regardless to what you have and what others have, regardless of the fact that life is not fair, I need to figure out, you need to figure out what we're going to do with the hand that we've been dealt. We can take our hand, we can sit on it and say it's a bad hand and do nothing. Life is not going to get better. We can take that bad hand and make the most of that bad hand. We can play the hand that we've been dealt and trust God to help us to make a good life. And so I want to share a parable with you guys that I believe speaks to this whole thing of equity, this whole thing of fairness, unfairness, this whole thing of being responsible. As you guys know, parables are short stories that have a strong meaning. And Jesus would often speak to his followers in parables, and he was always trying to make one single point with his parables. And so the parable itself is a made-up story, but the made-up story is to address a real-life issue. And so in this parable, Jesus starts it off this way. He says, and again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. Somebody say it's his wealth. The master entrusted his wealth to his servants. The parable continues. To one, he gave 5 bags of gold. He dropped 5 bags on him. Somebody say 5 bags. To another, he gave 2 bags. Somebody say 2 bags. And to another, 1 bag. But here's the key. Each according to his own ability. Now, what's interesting about this story is that they all didn't get the same amount. So it's easy to step back and look at this and say, that's not fair. Why does one person get 5 and another person gets 1? That is not fair. But here's what we must hold fast to. Here's what we cannot ignore about this story. And here's what we cannot ignore about life. The one who owns the wealth gets to decide how he distributes it. It was his wealth. He can give to whoever, how much ever he wants. And notice, he gave to each according to their own ability. Now, there is a difference between equality and equity. We should all strive for pushing equality, that all of us are equal. Equality is the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. That all of us are equal in the eyes of God. That all of us have inherent value because we were created in the image of God. That just because I have more doesn't mean that I'm more valuable in the eyes of God. Just because I have less doesn't mean that I'm less valuable in the eyes of God. And so in the eyes of God, we are all equal. And we as human beings should treat people equally. We shouldn't show favoritism to people who have more. We shouldn't show favoritism to people who are of more of important status. We shouldn't show favoritism to the celebrity over the person who works at Walmart. That everybody is equal in God's eyes, and everybody should be equal in our eyes. Equity is something different. Equity is the value of the shares issued by the company. It's the company's shares. They issue those shares. That is equity. Now, equity, the amount that's distributed is determined by the company. If I receive shares from a company, I'm grateful for the shares that I receive. I cannot demand from the company to give me more shares because it is not my company. Back to the parable. The man who had received 5 bags of gold, 5 shares, went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also, the one who had 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, he dug a hole in the ground, and he hid his master's money. Now, God is a wise investor, and the master in the story represents God. Any wise investor expects a return on their investment. If I invest money with you and you bring back to me the exact amount that I gave to you, you've done nothing for me. You're worthless to me. The story continues. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you have entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Now notice, the master's response was the same for the person who brought back 10 as it was for the person who brought back 4. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. But then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. Watch the excuse. So I was afraid. I was afraid. That was his excuse. I was afraid. And I went out and I hid your gold in the ground. Here is what belongs to you. The others, the first 2 brought interest because they immediately went to work with what they had. They took the cards that they were dealt and they played their hand. The third servant didn't do anything. He went and dug a hole and buried his master's money. And then he went to his mama's house, sat on the couch with a big bowl of cereal in front of him, playing his video game while scrolling through Instagram. When his master came back to settle accounts, knock, 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 he opened the door and had nothing to offer to his master but an excuse. Here's what Ben Franklin says about excuses. You guys know all about the Benjamins, Ben Franklin. He said, "He that is good at making excuses is seldom good at anything else." An excuse only satisfies the person that's making it. If you have a good excuse, and I know some of you do have good excuses, if you have a good excuse, they stole my money, I was wrongfully accused, they lied on me, he walked out on me, she cheated on me. If you have a good excuse, don't use it. Excuses don't do anything for you. And they don't do anything for God. His master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant." It's in the Bible. I didn't make it up. It's in the Bible. You wicked and lazy servant. The word wicked could also be translated worthless. That your excuses are worthless before God. Equity versus equality. Equality versus equity. You're all equal in God's eyes. We're all equal in God's eyes, but we don't all get the same amount. And just because I get more than you, God is not going to accept your excuses of being irresponsible. You still have to be responsible for what you have been entrusted. And here's the good part. If you're responsible with what you have, God will bless you with more. I'm a living testimony. See, I wasn't a 5-talent servant. Never have been a 5-talent servant. I'm somewhere between the 1 and the 2. But I took what God gave me. And I immediately put it to work. I can be a better father than my father was. I can raise my children better than I was raised. I can get up out of the hood. I can impact the hood in a good way. I was somewhere between a 1 talent and a 2 talent, but I took what I had and I immediately put it to work. I don't know when God is coming back, but I'm telling you, I got more than I was given. When God comes and knocks on my door, I'm going to give him more than what he gave to me. Because I refuse to make excuses, because excuses renders me worthless. Excuses doesn't solve my problems. So watch the master's response. "So you knew that I harvest where I've not sown, and gather where I've not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers. In other words, you could have did better than what you did. You could have did more than what you did. You could have put my money on deposit with the banker so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. Here's the verdict. So then, take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10. Why not the one who has 5? That's not fair. He already has 10. He who owns the wealth gets to determine how it's distributed. If he felt like the one who has the 5 could do a better job than the one who has the 10, he would give it to the one who has the 5. That's right. At the end of the day, the reason why many of us don't have more is because we're irresponsible with what we have. If you're irresponsible with 2, you'll be more irresponsible with 5. And God knows that. And God is not in the business of wasting. He says, for whoever has will be given more. Look at that. And they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. So here's the point. Responsible people get more because they can handle more. I know you want more. I want more too. But the strategy is not to beg for more, not to look for anybody to give you more. The strategy is to get responsible with what you have. Because if you get responsible with what you have and prove that you can handle more, every good investor is looking for a return on their investment. God is a good investor. And he's looking for people who's going to make him look good. And if you're that one, God will bless you with more. But on the flip side of that, irresponsible people will continue to suffer loss. It's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. I don't care how many government handouts they come up with, how creative they get. They can give you $25,000 for a down payment on a house. You take that $25,000, and by the third payment, you're in trouble because you're not responsible. You're going to lose that house. So even if they leveled the playing field right now, and every human being had $1 million each, it won't be leveled in 6 months. Human beings cannot keep the playing field level. It's impossible. We live in a fallen world. It will never be equity. It's always going to be an imbalance. And the imbalance is because people are irresponsible. He says, throw that worthless servant outside. You're not valuable for me. These are hard words, but they're in the Bible. These are hard words, but they're true. Throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This is why communism is so dangerous. because it renders us worthless. So here's what I want to leave you with. Everyone gets an uneven amount of opportunity. And everyone gets held accountable for what they do with it. So here's my challenge to you. And I believe this is God's challenge to you. Leverage each bag to the fullest. You need to learn how to leverage those bags. I'm telling you, that's my strategy. I'm taking those bags. Some of them are bigger than others, and I'm learning how to leverage those bags. Nita G, I'm telling you, we got to learn how to leverage those bags. We got to get good at leveraging our bags. I only got 2, but I'm going to leverage them to the fullest. I'm not going to make any excuses. I'm not looking at what the next man has. I'm not looking at what the next woman has. I'm focused on what I have and how I can leverage it to the fullest because I want to be blessed. I want my children to be blessed. I want my children's children to be blessed. I want to leave generational wealth, not generational excuses. If you make excuses, your children will grow up to make excuses. And their children will grow up to make excuses. That is a generational curse. You don't have the same amount as the next man. It is what it is. Don't focus on that. Focus on what you have. Stop comparing. And be responsible with what you have. Because just like in the parable, this is true in your life. After a long time, and we might be right there now, long time tomorrow, long time next week, I don't know. But after a long time, the master of those servants returned. God is going to return. God is coming back. He's going to look for a return on his investment. And the truth of the matter is, if we're being honest, some of you are worse than the 1 talent. Not only are you going to hand back God, not only are you just going to hand back God what he gave you, you're actually in a deficit. You went the other way. God created you one way and you went another way. God created you a male and now you're trying to be a female. God created you white, and now you're trying to be black. You went the other way. But it's not too late. You can turn this thing around. God is giving you an opportunity, equal opportunity, equal opportunity. God is giving you an opportunity to turn this thing around before he returns. So it's not by accident that you're here today. It's not by accident that you're viewing today. God is trying to get your attention. It's time for you to start leveraging those bags, leveraging that bag. Turn things around. No excuses, no excuses, no excuses. Make the most of what you have. Make the most of the hand that you've been dealt.